every single day there are men out there who have sons, and those sons want to emulate a different man, someone that they might not even like, some random uncle, one of their friends' dads. How do I be like little Johnny's dad? And they may not verbalize it, but they're thinking it. Look in the mirror, be humble, and realize like you probably don't have it all figured out. It's one or the other. You're either a fraud or you're the real life superhero. And they want to emulate you. Those are the two greatest decisions I've ever made in my life. They have the ability to instill violence on another human. Because if you have that ability, you can instill peace. Yeah, we literally know the neurological damage that it does when we don't let our 4 and 5-year-old ride their bike around the block by themselves. So it really starts with the fathers of what it is that we're doing for our sons. And then also for our daughters, because we have to be the representation of what it is that they look for.
Jesse, what is the single most important thing a man or father can do today in 2025 to really support their family, in your mind?
I mean, the first thing that comes to me is
Gentlemen, we have such a treat for you today. We have Jesse Carstairs. This was one of the more profound interviews that I think I've ever had. Jesse is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to how to leverage your faith, your vigor, your vitriol for life to help your sons and your daughters be better people. We talk about rite of passage, how to make sure that your kids get out of the house and don't go on to be hooligans. We talk about faith, how Jesus has completely changed his life, how it's changing mine, and how you could potentially join in on that. Even if you're not of a faith-based order, there's some great lessons in there for you. And then in particular, we talk about how to be better fathers, how to have a community, a tribe of men around us so that we can really work hard and do the right thing for our family. This is a profound conversation. I still have chills. We just finished. Join me in welcoming Jesse Carstairs right now. What do you feel, Jesse, is the biggest challenge that men today are facing in this society, whether men or fathers or all of the above?
Well, when it comes to men, I believe the biggest thing is men don't actually know the concept of being good at being a man, because we don't have fathers who are actually teaching us how to be a man. Culturally, there's no rite of passage that men go through. If you ask 5 of your buddies or 5 men just on the street how to define a man, you might get someone say, once you're taking responsibility for things. And I'll often combat it with, okay, my son has chores every single day. He is responsible for those, and he will get them done in the morning without us even asking sometimes. Does that make him a man? Because he takes care of all his responsibilities. Then they take a step back maybe, and they're like, well, what if you are married and you're paying all your bills and you don't rely on your parents? Okay. How many marriages are there where a man is paying all the bills, but him and his wife are merely roommates? He's not discipling his children. His wife has extremely elevated cortisol levels because she's taking on this masculine role. She's acting as the head of the household. So therefore, did that guy actually graduate into manhood? Is he a man? And then people, again, they're like, okay, you have a good point. So then I guess I don't know. So if we're not teaching our sons what it is to be a man, and we just ship them out into the world, then they have to just one day figure it out, or we expect them to one day it just to click, and it's just not the reality.
It's such a profound point. And you look at how our kids are graduating into quote unquote manhood once they leave the house, and they really don't have any lessons that they can take and move into life with. I mean, there's a lot of components that I want to dive into in that, but how can you and I, as dads of, you have an 8 and a 4-year-old, I have a 9, a 6, a 3-year-old, how can we start to set them up so that when they get closer to that point, they'll be able to have some of those lessons and be able to lead their household better.
So I think we got to start with fathers of how do we look through history and see what different cultures did as a rite of passage. Now, I'm not saying we have to take what it is that they did, but if you look in medieval times, to be a knight, you went through a stage when you were about 7 or 8 and you were called a page. And as being a page, you had to learn like proper etiquette. You had to learn like horsemanship and basic combat. And then maybe 7 years, 8 years later, they were squires. So they were serving a knight. So they were being discipled. They were learning how to use weapons and like engaging in like battle. And then they would graduate to knighthood. There was a ceremony. Your family would come and watch, and you were like swearing under oath, an oath of chivalry. We don't even practice chivalry anymore. And if you were a dishonest knight, it was considered treason. And then you even have like the Spartans with the agoge. You take these boys away from their mothers and you put them with a bunch of other boys who are discipled by men, and they're working on different combat. They're going through struggles. Again, in America, we don't ever want to see our children struggle. But when we allow them to struggle, they build resilience. Again, with it, agoge, they have to go through hardships. They test their endurance. They practice fasting. They do different combat. And then they have to eventually, when they graduate out of the agoge, they have to go fight somebody to the death, and then they come back. Not saying that that's what we need to do culturally, but if you look at like the samurais, the Mongols, Native Americans, they all had rites of passage. Even I think it's like there's still cultures in Africa today who do these rites of passages for boys. So if we're not actively thinking of how do we create these step-by-step graduation processes, like you said, we just want their mothers to raise them culturally is what we're doing until the day they're 18. Dads give them a fist bump, and they either get sent off to college to continue their growth around 18 to 22-year-olds who have the mental capacity of 10-year-old boys still, but pumped full of testosterone. So then that's where they're getting their life view on. And the only thing they can think of is like instant gratification. And we just expect them to be men. So it really starts with the fathers of what it is that we're doing for our sons. And then also for our daughters, because we have to be the representation of what it is that they look for.
Yeah, you mentioned something that we can definitely allude to, and a couple of components of that is we give our kids a fist bump as dads, and many dads are the best friend to their kids while they, as you've said before, allow their wife to kind of take on all of the roles of the house, and we just follow orders, which is a challenge. I mean, there's a lot of quote unquote feminist activities in society today where the wife does a lot more of the more masculine roles that have happened in the past. So I try the same thing, right? Don't be the best friend to your kids. Hold that role, be that role model, and follow them through life and coaching them. So that's truly profound. How can we start the process of, getting them into those rites of passage? I mean, what are some kind of things that you're thinking about as your kids start to grow into their, early tens and teens years?
Well, we have to parent intentionally. And if we should take a step back, that couples don't ever talk about their parenting strategy until the day they have kids, or until the day that the kid is now 2 or 3 and possesses some sort of habit created by the parents, allowed by the parents, that they don't like. And then they discuss in the moment how they should be parenting this situation. So couples, before you have kids, you need to have your plan of how you're parenting. And just like any contract, it can be renegotiated. But you can't renegotiate something if you've never started those negotiation process. So, but anyone who already has children, like you and I, are we parenting intentionally? So my boys, they when they hit 7, my 8-year-old, I essentially agogie them. I take them away from the mom. I'm fortunate enough that I work from home and my wife's a stay-at-home mom, but she never disciplines him. If I even hear him not listening to her, I will take 2 minutes, go out and have a discussion, or I'll call him into my office. Because how many fathers will hear in the background the mom arguing with their son about not doing XYZ, and he never gets involved until she calls him. I'll get your father, or babe, come deal with your son. He's not listening. And that is the stress that is going to continuously be put on our wives when we should be the ones who talk to him about here's what we do around women. Here's how we treat women. Here's the suffering that I'm putting you through. And you're going to see the long-term benefit. Like, honestly, I might be biased. I think my sons are fucking great. But it's because of all the work that I've been putting in essentially since day one. Even my 4-year-old, the things that I talk to him about, he still is all his mother's. I want my children from the day they're born to the day that they're about 6 to have all that feminine energy and understand the love of a mother. Because a mother is a son's first love. And I think the feminine energy of a mother is so vital to both boys and girls when they are young. That's imperative. That's why I'm not a fan of men pushing their wife out into the workplace, because it's taking away from the home. So back to some of the other things that I'm doing, it's like what I constantly try to put my son in situations where he fails, or I let him have all this freedom like an adult would. I give him the respect of an adult, but I treat him like a child. And people might be confused of that. It's like anything he wants to do. If he wants to take my power tools, go outside and build a fort, 100% just put him back when you're done. My son has been starting my car for me since he was 3. And I would have friends who would lose their shit. Oh yeah, he's just gonna slam that thing and drive and just take off and run into the neighbors. It's like he's literally not tall enough to hit the brake and put it in drive.
Yeah.
And it's just the thing that people don't get. They don't think logically about it. But if I empower him to start my car and warm it up for me every morning, give him the key fob, he's not going to try and do something more mischievous when I'm not looking, because I empower him and give him a responsibility of doing that. Because everybody has a child at some point from 3 to 8 who've wanted or tried to start their parents' car for them. I mean, there's not a person listening who doesn't, either it happened to them or their friend. I can't believe little Billy tried to start the car. And then they rip their ass. It's like, well, how about we just take that step forward and just empower them to just do those things? Then it gets rid of when mom's not looking, I'm going to go start the car. Or I'm waiting in the car for mom and I'm going to start it. And then it puts them in a state of panic. I was the one who showed them, hey, here's how you start the car. If you hit this button, it'll warm it. It'll put the defrosters on. Boom.
Heat the
Anytime.
seats. Yep.
Again, this might be something that is out of ordinary for the culture. When he was about 2.5, I gave him a pocket knife. And my wife was like, whoa, what are we doing? It's like, one, pocket knives aren't very fun. So they're not going to be wanting to play with it all the time. But I wanted him to understand this concept of like, it's sharp, it can cut things, and he's not strong enough to hurt himself. One day we're in a stroller, he's walking and he cuts his finger and it's bleeding and he's just looking at it. He has no idea what's going on. He's not crying, he's not screaming, because he doesn't see our reaction. I see it bleeding and my wife's just like cruising along, And when she noticed, I immediately put my hand on her shoulder. I was like, it's been bleeding for like 45 seconds.
Yeah.
And
Don't
she's
say
like,
anything.
oh, yeah. And so then he pretty much never cut himself after that. But we would let him take the knife, help cut like slices of bananas. We would help. We would let him do these things with the knife. So then he's totally prepared by the time he's like 6 or 7 and is like, can I cut open my Christmas present? Can I cut open the Amazon box? Yeah, he's been practicing using knives and maybe poke himself here or there that he's very aware of how to use a knife. Again, pocket knives aren't fun, so it's not something that he carries around with him. He just knows where one is and he'll go and get his pocket knife when he wants to open something. Because I gave him the power and taught him young. I mean, the kid at 4 was making his own scrambled eggs. I don't make him food. He's 8. I never make him food. He'll make his own steak. He'll make his own banana pancakes, which is just a banana and 3 eggs in a blender. He knows how to do all that. But it's because I was intentionally allowing him to be independent and fail. I'd rather clean up a dozen messes than me be his fucking cook or my wife. My wife doesn't need to be wasting her time making them meals. Now she invested the time to show them how to make banana pancakes. They light we have a gas stove. They light it themselves. You know, lately my son's been playing with fire and he does it around us. He doesn't try to do it anywhere else because I'm like, yeah, you can light that. Do that over here, over here. And how are you going to put this kind of fire out? How are you going to put a grease fire out if there's a fire on here? And at a young age, he knows the difference. And it's like, if anything gets out of control, calmly just come get me. Because panic doesn't help anything. It doesn't automatically just put out the bad situation. So I guess if we're intentionally parenting, because I believe in, like, again, the respect of an adult, but let them be a child, I let them just go crazy. But then when we're like in a place in a public setting, they know that they to have the respect for other people's space. I don't even know if I answered your question, but
Absolutely. John Rosemond is one of the original kind of parenting gurus. He has a book called Parenting by the Book. I'm not sure if you've heard of it at all. And it basically is the principles of the Bible or how children should be raised. And what he talks about in particular is the 1950s when this John Rosemond was being raised by his mother. They did all the same things you just articulated, right, Jesse? So go out and play. Cross the street if you want to. Just look for cars. Ride your bike through the neighborhood. There are so many people, especially in metro areas today. If you ever let your kid go outside on their own, they're calling the cops on you, right? So our society has shifted so far. But to your point, allowing your kids to see and touch those shiny objects, to see that they're not so special. For us in particular, we have a Glock 19 in the house. Anytime the kids want to take a look at it, absolutely. Let's pull it out. Exactly, right? Let's look at it. Here's how to render it safe. Here are all the things you need to do so that it's not that shiny thing up on the top of the closet. So that's so cool. And I think that's something that we really all need to continue to push forward with.
yeah, we literally know the neurological damage that it does when we don't let our 4 and 5-year-old ride their bike around the block by themselves. We know that it helps develop their cognitive function. Allowing them to do dangerous things while just reminding them to be focused improves their cognitive development. It's not even debated. Like, it's just culturally we're like, well, let's not talk about that because we want to protect our children. But it really only just sets them up for failure. One of the other things that I try to instill in my children is, being dangerous. Like, the physical ability to be dangerous. They're in wrestling. And one of the things is, it's like, how do we create men who are able to be dangerous and have it under control? It's that Jordan Peterson line. And it's very real. And the reason I say this is I've seen parents who, with 2 or 3-year-olds who are the most aggressive on a spectrum of 2 to 18-year-olds by far. They're figuring out the social cues. So they're hitting, they want to steal something from another kid. And then you go to 18-year-olds. 18-year-olds don't hit anybody. They're not stealing things from other kids because they've socialized. And I've seen parents who, when 2 or 3-year-olds hit each other, they immediately want to intervene and tell their kid, very loudly, don't hit. And it's like, well, they're actually developing social cues with one another. If the kid keeps hitting, he'll learn that the other kids don't want to play with him.
Yeah.
Like if you look at any like wolf pack, any pack of dogs, any other animal, mammals out there, take a pride of lions. Mothers are never interfering with the rough and tumble play or the disagreements of pups or cubs. They socially figure that stuff out. Again, part of cognitive development is having to overcome those social cues. But if parents are doing it for them, how is it that they learn social cues? And then you got kids growing up to have anxiety, social anxiety. They don't want to talk to people because their parent has done it for them their entire life. But back to the hitting thing, so like if there's a bully at school, they've been programmed their entire life to never stand up for themselves. Because even if once you get to like the 4, 5, 6, it's like if someone hits you, you shouldn't hit them back. It's like,
Yeah,
so we're teaching children to never defend themselves. So then you are creating societies of defenseless people. In middle school, this is a real story where some of the parents at wrestling are talking about how this boy grabbed a girl by her throat in middle school. This was just a month ago. Pushed her up against a locker, screamed at her, and never got in any trouble. Just because of how like society is right now. Like nobody gets in trouble for anything. And it's like no boys are going to defend that girl because they've been taught to not engage. No girl is like going to stick up for that girl and say like don't hit her because just culturally how we're parenting our children. It's like I want my boys to be the most respectful. I want them to be gentlemen. I want to teach them about chivalry and courting a woman. But I also want them to have the confidence that they can handle themselves physically in any situation. They have the ability to instill violence on another human. Because if you have that ability, you can instill peace. It is when we are not allowing, like young boys especially, to engage in that inner violence, that inner animal that we've had forever. For anyone who thinks that however long you think we've been on Earth as humans, whether it's 315,000 years or 6,000 years, whatever it is, anyone's belief, for less than 1% of our existence, we want to take the animal out of a man and say, you need to be passive. When it's like why we love superheroes, little boys, Hulk, the villains. It's because it's like that inner monster that they relate to. And then just how do we just teach our sons to, again, be gentlemen, be a man of chivalry, integrity, and honor, but have that strength and courage to be violent. And like that's one of the things I like continuously talk to my sons about. It's like on the wrestling mat is where you need to inflict pain on somebody. The second you're done, you can hug them, shake their hands, give them a kiss on the cheek, just like Mike Tyson did.
That's right.
It's like people don't realize like when Mike Tyson was in the ring and he would knock someone out, he would go in there to like literally rip their heart out, leave it bleeding on the ground. The second it was over, anyone can go watch. Mike Tyson would give them a hug and a kiss on the cheek and hope that they were okay. Wish their family that he was okay. So like think about the mindset of that you're able to just like have it under such control that you can just have emotional strength and mental strength along with your physical strength, and you can ensure peace. And you can protect anybody at any time.
That's right. But like John Lovell says, right? You need to be both a poet and a warrior
Yeah.
and meld the two of them, right? So that you can instill that violence. And I think that's critical and something we definitely need to work with our spouses on for that. Let's quickly talk, if we can, Jesse, about camaraderie, having a tribe
Mm.
of fellow men. You've talked about this quite a bit. And, it can be lonely, I'm sure, for all of us, being a man in today's society, especially if you work a W-2 job. You wake up in the morning, you try to help your wife get the kids going, get them out of the house, you go to work, you bear the burden of the financial and professional stress that comes with that. Kids come home, you go to bed, you get up, you do it all over again. Making time for camaraderie, for having a tribe of other men to commiserate with can be a challenge. And it's not the drinking buddies you had in high school and
Hmm.
college. For me, having a tribe of men now at age 43 almost, who really share my values, my ethos, has fundamentally changed my life. But I'm just curious of your thoughts. Where does camaraderie between men really come into play for us today?
Well, today we don't have that culture. We live in an individualistic culture when, again, forever we were in communal people, lived in tribes, band of brotherhoods. There's a reason why all those terms have been around. And you look in any history book, and there was tribes of people, tribes of men, brotherhoods, etc. A band of bad guys. Okay, every term that we can think of, right? Um, Even in the military, it's like there's a platoon, a group of guys who are willing to risk their lives for one another. And then when you ask those same guys in the military if they would risk their life for somebody else in a different branch, they actually say no because they never met them. But when
Yeah.
you ask them about the men in their platoon, they're like, every single man in here, I'm willing to risk my life for. So what does that say? It's like we need that as men, and it has to be of like-minded men. You bring up the great point of not just the drinking buddies. That's gonna be a disservice. You're gonna wallow in the things, the imperfections of your marriage. You're gonna probably vent about your wife, which you should not do. It's gonna take you those couple steps backwards. I even go as far as to tell married men you shouldn't your friend group shouldn't be a bunch of single men. Like, because you're just going to end up talking about things that are
Yeah.
inappropriate.
Yeah.
I definitely believe a brotherhood is part of the fix of this like men's mental health trend that's going on. It's like if you are with other brothers of like mind, you guys can hold each other accountable. What line is it in the Bible that says, as iron sharpens iron, men sharpen one another? Again, you can go into the Bible and look, and it calls us to hold one another accountable, because it says, do not, we're not to judge. But it does say in Proverbs that we judge our brothers who are of faith and we hold them accountable. Okay, so if one of my buddies publicly isn't, maybe he's bagging on his wife a little bit and they think it's funny, it's like, bro, that's not appropriate. You shouldn't be doing that. Or if he's parenting this way, or if I'm parenting a certain way, or my relationship, it's like, how do we continue to help each other prove because we're of like mind? How do we hold each other accountable? How do we actually instill the iron sharpening iron? And I think it's so important, you know, and equally for moms, it's like, how do we actually give your wife time to meet with girlfriends and them just talk about whatever it is they want to talk about? But no, I think having a brotherhood is so important. And then bringing those sons with those men along with each other to see the camaraderie.
Yeah. Yeah. We started our NOCO Gentleman Society, Northern Colorado Gentleman Society, about 2 years ago for that exact same reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're all just grinding through the days and having the ability to get together. It takes work to
Mm-hmm.
continue and do those activities, whether we're just going to go to the indoor shooting range, whether we're going to play golf, or whether we're just going to bring the entire family together, to your last point there, right, Jesse? If we can have the wives, the kids, everybody to come together in a collective group so that we can all, live this life and share those morals, it's profound and it makes a huge difference. What role has faith played in your life, Jesse?
The biggest one. Single the single biggest improvement of my life was hold on. I always said I was a man of faith. Even in high school, it's like, put a gun to my head, I believe in God. But my actions were nothing like that I believed. I was, in a sense, you could say I was that guy who believed and was like, well, he died for my sins. Everything's going to be okay. Even though I'm knowingly going to sin today, tomorrow, and intentionally a lot on the weekend.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I got baptized as like 4 years ago. I had already had children with my wife. We weren't even married actually at the time though. And people who worked for me literally said I was different the next day. And it's like, I feel different.
Yeah.
They could notice that I was different. And then I got married 1 year later to my wife, who we had been together for way too long for not being married. And the covenant that I made with her before God literally like sealed the deal. And those are the two greatest decisions I've ever made in my life. I could not do another thing. I could die today. And it's like those two things, getting baptized and then getting married, making the covenant with God before my community, it is huge. It's literally transformed who I am as a person, a man, my outlook on life. Yeah, I owe everything to God.
I'm on a journey right now from a faith perspective, and I've actually just shot a video about it in particular. I was never religious at all. My family was agnostic, to put it lightly, but atheist really when it came to it.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of believe that, well, you've got the Bible and you've got religion to help people keep values and morals and ethics and their ethos as they're going through life, so they're not doing bad things. But we're a pretty good family. We have our own set of morals, so we never went to church. And then coming in with my NOCO gentleman society and getting to know those gentlemen, and they slowly pushed and prodded subtly to say, try church, just try it a little bit. And I started going, had some health issues with my family, and started to really start saying, you know what? I think there's something here more than just going to church on Sundays and hearing the sermons and getting to appreciate the values that are professed there. So I'm kind of right on that cusp, right? Reading the Bible, really starting to embrace that. But since you just were baptized 4 years ago, can you kind of tell me and other guys watching right now who are thinking, okay, I'm just on the cusp, I'm getting ready to dive deeper into this faith journey. What was the catalyst for you to get baptized, and why should men think about taking that next step?
Well, for me, I had a child out of wedlock. My I always thought I'd be married at least one time, and I was never going to be married 2 times. In the moment, I was in a Bible study group, and the Bible study group was trying to essentially be our own tiny little church because it's 2020. People are being weird. And they wanted me to take on a leadership role. And I was like, oh man. And then they actually came back and is like, it'd be hypocritical of us to allow you to take on a leadership role, being you're not married, you have a child, you and your essentially my girlfriend continuously sleep with each other. And I was like, you're right. And I love my wife more than I ever imagined I could love anybody. And she was like not happy about that. She's like, there's no difference. It's like we're married. And I had to realize, like, if she's ever going to get closer to God, I had to be the example. And there was this calling for me to want to just dig deeper. I just like felt this, it's almost like when you look at a hockey stick of performance, whether it's, business performance or the stock performance, that hockey stick. I was kind of on that bottom part going, man, I want to keep going into this faith. And then they already had a time reserved, like, hey guys, in like 2 months, we're going to do a baptism, anyone who wants to get baptized. Again, this is in my Bible study group. And it's like, yes, it's March, so it's cold out. Again, Tahoe, the Truckee River, it's really cold from the runoff of the snow. And we were going to do it on this balcony right next to the river in a heated pool. And I was like, I want to get baptized in the river. Like, being a follower of Christ is not something comfortable. Like, we are persecuted. It's not an easy journey. And I was like, I want to get done in the river. And they were like, it's kind of inconvenient to take everyone down to the river and then come back. And I was like, I'll go with one person. I don't care. I'm getting baptized in the river. Got baptized in the river just like I wanted. And came out literally like pointed to the sky, started to get emotional. It was awesome. And then half dozen other people got baptized in the river right after. It was a cool experience. And it literally, I felt like it changed me.
The very next day.
It's that, yeah, it's that thing where it's like we are baptized to essentially like die for our sins, and then we have risen again just like Christ. It's like the mimicking of Christ. And I was like, this is awesome. And then I intentionally wanted to marry my wife. 1 year later, we got married. And yeah, that was huge for me too. And again, where I am today in my marriage, where my faith in God is exponentially greater than I could have ever imagined after doing those two things. I would not be the man who I am today, not even a fraction, if I had not got married, because it's like socially it's okay to just live with one another, have babies out of wedlock. It's a poor demonstration to your children. It's disrespectful to my wife, or at the time girlfriend, to not make any of those commitments. You essentially are. I was representing something of 1 foot in, 1 foot out the entire time. Because how easy is it to just break up with your girlfriend? You're not committed. You're just. I say this to people like, you have a girlfriend, you're just sleeping with someone until you find someone else to sleep with, and you just call it your girlfriend. Yeah.
What are some of the teachings from Jesus that, dads can really take to heart after, watching you and I have this discussion today and say, all right, I can implement this today?
Jesus was a representation of strength under control. He's never quick to anger. Jesus did not preach to live in fear. He led confidently. Even when his disciples would question decisions, he's like, you have such little faith. Just the faith of a mustard seed can move a mountain. There's two examples in the Bible. You got Adam, and Adam failed to lead Eve. He failed to take responsibility for his actions in that relationship. And then we have Jesus, who makes up for all the failures of Adam, because Adam's the first demonstration of how to be a man to us. Or if we look at it on what we need to learn from Adam. But Jesus was the true example of how we need to live and what we need to model. So if you read the New Testament, pay attention to the way he acts, the way he thinks, the way he presents himself. He's calm, cool, and collective the entire time. He represents sacrificial love. Love your wife as Christ loved the church and died for her. It's like, are we demonstrating sacrificial love? After he talks about how his food his work was literally his food, and that's what, satiated him. While he was fasting, he would continue to disciple people and continue to do that without eating, because that's what gave him life, and he was essentially spreading fruit. But that's not how we as men think in today's culture. We just think that, we get home, we're done for the day. When really that family, that discipleship, us leading them, should be like, I have so much more energy now that I'm in this door.
And like you said, Jesus is the best example of a masculine man, right? So
Mhm.
if we want to model something, he is the one to model off of.
Yeah, he could have taken on the Roman Empire anytime he wanted. The Roman soldiers, if he wanted, he could have. Now, again, everybody knew he had the ability. There's a story where he makes the whip, he weaves the whip, goes into the temple, flips the tables because they are doing things that are inappropriate inside the temple. They're taxing people coming in, they're trying to make money off the setting. And he had to put his foot down and let them know that that's not appropriate. And everyone fled. No one challenged or questioned him in that moment. And then him even carrying the cross. If he wanted, he could have dismantled all those Roman soldiers. But he demonstrated sacrificial love. Like, are we as men demonstrating sacrificial love?
That's right. Absolutely. You talked about in one of your videos the other day about you basically said you say you would die for your family as a father. You would die for your kids, for your family in a heartbeat. But are you living for them? And how kids in particular look at their father like a superhero until they realize that their father isn't because he's too slobby, too fat, no interest in moving on with life. And then they simultaneously lose their hero in their mind and realize that they can never become one as well.
Mm-hmm.
It was such a profound statement. Anything else from that perspective of how we can live for our kids and not just plan to die for them someday?
Yeah, we have to be the demonstration every single day of what it is to be that superhero. Are we continuously dating their mother? Are we speaking to her in a manner we would not allow another man to speak to her? Because we'll just take Clark Kent, Superman. You know that's relatable to little kids. It's like, does he ever lose his temper at his spouse when you see him? Does he give that persona? No.
Yeah.
Is he ever out of shape? No. He can do everything. Are we actually doing the things we say we're going to do? Because Superman, he would do what he said he was going to do physically, mentally, the whole bit. Or are we just leading them down to a point where at some age they realize we're frauds? Because it is going to be the point where they realize that we're either a fraud or we become a man who they want to emulate. It's one or the other. You're either a fraud or you're the real life superhero, and they want to emulate you. Because something that's going to suck is that every single day there are men out there who have sons, and those sons want to emulate a different man, someone that they might not even like, some random uncle, one of their friends' dads. How do I be like little Johnny's dad? And they may not verbalize it, but they're thinking it. Yeah. So it
It's
sucks to
and that's
suck.
terrifying. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
absolutely terrifying for your son in particular to want to do that. And it goes back, Clark Kent, just like the warrior and the poet, right?
Mhm.
Very cordial, very chivalrous, which is very difficult to do these days in light of cancellation and things like that, but at the same time has the capability to be that superhero.
Mhm.
We could talk for hours. I don't want to take too much of your time, Jesse.
No, I'm
I
good.
do have no. This is great. Yeah, I have a few more questions for you. First and foremost, where can people find you? I know you have a community. You make a lot of change for a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, so I do have a school community. It's the skool.com/ultimate husband. The school community is actually called High Value Life because I get single men who don't understand the concept of being a man. I will have women who reach out. Majority of the people who do reach out are women who are like, "Hey, my husband treats me this way. My husband allows my father-in-law to treat me this way, etc. How can we change?" So that's why it's called High Value Life, because we do Zooms multiple times a week for single men, men leading their families, for women, and then I have one-on-one coaching that I do for specifically for men. But yeah, just finding me on Instagram at Jesse Carstairs. All my socials are at Jesse Carstairs. Nothing fancy.
Yeah, your stuff's fantastic. And, some of your YouTube videos are clips from your Zoom calls, which is really interesting to see and get a taste of what you do and the topics and the faith that you bring into a lot of these discussions is profound. So, yeah, and I'll, of course, link all that down below. So, Jesse, what is the single most important thing a man or a father can do today in 2025 to really support their family in your mind?
I mean, the first thing that comes to me is you have to be humble enough to look in the mirror and acknowledge the things that you are lacking. Because if you're filled with insecurity, pride, you're masking your inadequacies, you're not going to make the change because of those handful of things. So you have to be willing to be so humble and say, I don't have it. That's what I did. I had to be like, fuck, I'm not very good at this relationship, leadership aspect of life. Because when men and women get in a relationship and you're young, and maybe you're paying some bills, it's fun, okay? And then it's that hockey stick of responsibilities and growth that you need to attain, and too many guys just stay flatlined. And the woman is going up because she's taking on more in that relationship, children, tidying the household, etc. Maybe you're having her work and then you still expect her to come home and do the wifely duties. And, there's still more to go. You have boys who are 10, 11, who are just kind of disrespectful to their mom. You're not engaged. So to bring it back to your question, it's like, look in the mirror. Are you living an ideal marriage? Are you guys continuously growing? Is your marriage improving day to day? Is your wife in the most feminine state because you went through the work to be the most masculine that you can be, and that you guys are complementary of one another, because your wife will multiply your efforts. So that's not how you feel, if you don't feel like King Leonidas and his wife in that first 12 minutes of that movie, if you're not Beauty and the Beast, for any women who are listening, it's like he needs to take a look in the mirror and figure out what it is that he's not doing and reach out to someone. Get into a brotherhood of men who have great marriages. Because we've all gone to dinner with a couple who they either have a great energy or they have shit energy as a couple. So look in the mirror, be humble, and realize like you probably don't have it all figured out.
Yeah. And it goes to a lot of what you've talked about of being the head of the household and forcing the issue of, okay, there are roles in the household. If your wife works full-time, you both work full-time, then you got to split some of those duties.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, the man should be the head of the household for those reasons that we've talked about already, right?
Most definitely. Yeah.
Last question. I asked this to everybody, Jesse, and I think we should definitely continue this conversation as we move forward in the weeks and months ahead. But this is kind of a hypothetical. I call it diamond advice. I grabbed it from Graham Cochran, who does his golden rule when he talks on his podcast. But basically, the theory is this. You've got your two boys. They're grown. They're out of the house. You've instilled as much knowledge into them as you possibly can, but they've forgotten everything, Jesse. All of your lessons, except for one lesson, one piece of diamond advice that they can take with them to move forward in life. What would your one piece of diamond advice be to your boys as they move forward?
Dive into the Bible. Dive into Scripture. If they forget everything, dive into the Scripture.
I keep hearing that a lot more lately. I think there's a sea change coming, Jesse. I think that men like you and I, and you who's watching right now, see that there's a need for us to rise up and to take hold of our life and use Jesus, the Bible, and our faith as our guide.
Yeah,
this has been a true honor, Jesse. I could not be more excited to have chatted with you today. And I think we can continue the conversation as we move forward. Anything else left for you that you want to bring up?
No, that is it. Anytime you want me back, I'm all for it.
Awesome. Good stuff. Jesse, have a good day, sir. Appreciate you.
Yeah, Ryan, likewise.